All right, in this next video, we're going to go over function operations. A couple things when we're reading a function. All right, this is common notation that you'll see. Right, and how do you read it? So when you see this first one, f of x, right, that's how it's read. So that's how we're going to state that statement. Now this one is what we call composition. This is f of g of x. And then also sometimes you'll see, some people call this the fog notation, that we have this of dot. So f of g of x as well. All right, so a couple things to also know about functions is that the italicized letters, usually they'll use f, g, and h first. Anytime you see those italicized letters, they are to denote that you're working with a function. They are not variables. So you're not solving for f per se. It's just to denote that you are working with a function. And then you also have to be careful about what are the inputs. So when you see that function notation, that italicized letter, usually what will come right after is a set of parentheses. What's inside that set of parentheses then is the inputs for that function. When you evaluate functions, right, make sure that you use the corresponding algebraic expression that's given. And the coordinates are carefully matched. If coordinates are given, carefully match the input with the corresponding output. So if you're given a set of coordinate points, remember that like that ordered pair is an input and an output. So let's take a look at this first example. So we want you to evaluate. They give us the function, right? And it's in a set of ordered pairs. So we have 4 ordered pairs. Then they ask us, well, what is f of -2? So this is our input. So immediately you should be thinking this -2 is the input. So do we have a -2 input? Well, all the inputs are, remember, our x values. So 9, -9, -2, and 2. And we can see that we've got it a -2 input, so that means this is our output. So f of -2 equals 0. There's our answer. Next one, what's g of 2? If g of x equals x squared minus 3x, we're just going to substitute here. All right, so once we write out the substitution, we can then evaluate it. So g of -2 is positive 10. Now, oftentimes you'll get this too. They'll ask you an input would be a variable. So what is f of a if f of x equals 3x plus 2? Right? They're just checking to see if you understand what's an input and what's an output in the notation. So we want to do the substitution and then simplify where possible. And that'll be our final answer for that one. Function composition. Composition occurs when the input of a function depends on the output of another function. So when we're taking a look here, when I look at f of g of x is the input of f of x. Whereas now g of f of x switches it around. The f of x is the input for the g function. When you evaluate composition, you want to work from the inside out. Just like in the order of operations, if you have a set of parentheses, you want to work with the inside function first and then work your ways out. All right, so let's take a look at this next example. So it says given f of x equals these 3 ordered pairs and g of x equals these 3 ordered pairs, we're going to have to evaluate some composition. So this first one says, what is the g of f of -2? Well, if it helps, I like to think of this as g of f of -2, and then I like to break down the colors here. So really, So we have to evaluate what's the orange first before we get to the green. Because composition works just like order of operations. You do what's the innermost parentheses first and then work your way out. So f of -2, we're looking for an input of -2. There it is. And the result is 2. So now we end up with g of 2. So the g of 2, I take a look at the g functions, right? I've got a -5 input, a 7 input. Here's my 2 input. The output is 9. So then our final answer here, let's take a look at this next one. So again, I want to rethink this as f of g of 7. So we need to evaluate the innermost function first. So g of 7. So here's my g function. 7 evaluates to a -2. So then we have f of -2. I go to my f function. -2 has an output of +2. So then our final answer equals 2. And that's function operations.